Aside from using cheats, if there was a way to increase the probability of winning games, wouldn't you want to do that? So this story begins with the fact that Battlefield 5 has an incredibly low time to kill, or TTK, compared to most other shooters on the market right now. This increases the first shooter advantage exponentially, as you only need a couple of shots to really kill somebody. So naturally, anybody who might be motivated to win a game or two might resort to camping. Which, in my opinion, really isn't all that big of a deal. I mean, you're going to have this in any game. You're never going to convince everybody who plays a game not to do it unless you add some sort of game-breaking thing, like damage over time for sitting still. There was a recent video by JackFrags that I saw that brought up a pretty good point in that you could just add idle sounds every about 20 seconds, and that would probably solve the problem for the majority of the people that actually care about it. Another issue that Jack brings up is that in Battlefield 5, it is incredibly hard to spot players that are laying down. This is mostly because there is no kind of animation or any movement whatsoever from the player unless they are moving their mouse around or adjusting their position at all. This could be solved with some sort of idle animation. Alright, well, that's about a minute worth of tangent off of the intro for this video, so let's go ahead and get into the core of the content. How do you go about using these tactics to cheese your way to victory? So the way this normally works is you pick a place sufficiently far enough away from the plane that you're probably going to be the only person that lands there. Generally, you can probably get about as far as 1,400 meters in my experience, but I like to jump at about 1175 from the marker that I place. I just find that it gets me to the ground a little bit quicker, but also it's a pretty good distance and there might not be another player there. Normally, you wouldn't go to Hodstad or any other landmark for that matter. You want to go somewhere that's quiet and doesn't necessarily have as many players. You got to get your loot, and then you got to find people. Speaking of loot, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video from here on out, because as you can see, it's just going to be a whole lot of looting. That is one of the downsides to this tactic, is that you spend a ton of time just finding loot because you don't spawn where there are any players. There's no action, and that's kind of the point. And that gives us a pretty good segue into the next part of this tactic, is that you don't necessarily want to take every single fight that you find. You want to choose your battles. You want to make sure that if you go to kill somebody, you won't be killed by somebody else hiding in a bush right away. If you see somebody out in the open, kind of like this guy now, it might be a good idea to kill him. You could probably kill him without him getting to cover, and it won't be a long fight. That being said, you probably want to give it a little bit of time after you kill a player like this. You don't want to go straight for that loot, because if somebody's sitting there watching off in the corner or in a bush or just over that hill and they heard this little fight of yours, they will be waiting for you to go get that loot. And once you've gotten all the loot that you want off the person that you successfully killed, or if you haven't killed anybody, just sat around, the next thing that you're going to want to do is basically play the edge of the zone. This is to avoid as many people as possible, but also plays a double role in that you can catch people who are also doing the same thing as you. There are a lot of people who want to try to avoid the fights, and they'll play at the edge of the zones as much as possible to avoid people. So you can catch them off guard, and at the same time, you guessed it, you get to do some more looting. But if you're anything like me, this gets boring pretty quickly. And I think this is just as good as any other time to talk about the disadvantages of this tactic. First off, there's no guarantee that somebody won't spot you sitting there camping, like this poor guy. And the next thing is that it's incredibly time consuming. You can spend 10-15 minutes, like this previous clip in this video where I sped up things. That was about a 3,800% speed up, I believe, where 15 minutes gets condensed down to about 15 seconds. Even that game ended with me just getting killed by somebody else who was also camping. So it's really, it can pay off, but if it doesn't, you feel like you just wasted a large portion of your own time. And this last one I can't even really blame on the player. This is something that should probably be fixed by DICE and EA. Just camping kinda can ruin the experience for other players, and as much as I said it's not really a big deal, there are plenty of people that would disagree with that sentiment. Plenty of people don't want to waste their time playing a game like this just to be killed by somebody hiding from the bushes. And while that happens a lot in Battlefield, I think it's something that maybe people should consider when they're doing it. And I truly hope that this is something that DICE themselves will address in a future update. We've already gotten one update with the first week of Firestorm launch, but something like what JackFrags had mentioned and I talked about a little bit earlier, those idle animations and some idle noises for that matter, would definitely solve the problem for a lot of people. It would give some sort of talent in sort of spotting those kinds of people, and it would give less incentive to do so, so maybe it would cut it down a little bit. But this game is already kind of launched with a bad perception as far as battle royales go with the loot management for the most part. But I think people have kind of warmed up to it, and if we don't continue to improve the state of the game, it will never continue to take off like other battle royales. They already have the free-to-play advantage on a lot of them except for PUBG, which we don't have, and that might be another topic for us to discuss, actually, is the option of free-to-play for Firestorm, or the future of Firestorm in that matter. Hopefully we get some insight on that from DICE, but I personally don't think that they're going to take that route, unfortunately. Anyway, that's enough rambling on this video, so I think I'm going to cut it here. The next two videos, I think the first one will be a very short video discussing how to avoid campers like the ones that this video is describing, different tactics that you can use to just not die to them. It's not bulletproof, but there are a couple things you can do. And then after that, I think I'm going to discuss my ideal Battlefield 6, or whatever the next franchise release will be, and kind of the features that I'd like to see in that. So if you're at all interested in seeing those, go ahead and subscribe and you'll be able to see when those come out. This is also my first video, if you'd noticed, so if there's anything that you think might need improving or any suggestions you have, go ahead and leave those down below, or you can go ahead and private message me and I'll try and make those improvements in the future. Thanks for watching.